There has been a lot of talk and coverage about a potential serial killer stalking the New England area after body started piling up earlier this year. Well, guess what? As all of that has been going on, police caught a guy who authorities are now saying could in fact be a serial killer in Massachusetts. We're going to break this down with the reporter who has been all over this story. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Real quick, before we get into this more, I know this is a 180, but you ever look at the nutrition label on a bag of chips, seed oils, dyes, MSG? It's more like a science experiment than a snack. Well, Masa, their mission is to bring real food back with tortilla chips that are made from just 3 ingredients: organic corn, sea salt, 100% grass-fed beef tallow. There are no seed oils or mystery ingredients ever. They're crunchier, they're tastier, and they're more satisfying than other chips. So you actually feel good after snacking. There's no bloat, there's no binging, and if you love Masa, you are also going to love their 3-ingredient potato chips, Vandy Crisps. So, I got them right here. Masa, I gotta tell you, I love this habanero flavor. Phenomenal. But, now I got Vandy too. I really like these. These are like the original ones. I'm a mess. I'm a mess, I know, but they're amazing. So, if you're ready to give Masa or Vandy a try, use code SIDEBAR for 25% off of your first order at masachips.com or vandycrisps.com. You know, I shouldn't have eaten. You can also You can also click the link in the description, scan the QR code, or find them at Sprout stores nationwide. Definitely want to check them out. Do you remember when we covered whether or not there was a serial killer terrorizing New England? This was back in the spring and summer. It was reported that there were, 13 bodies that surfaced in the region over the course of several months, mostly women, found in Rhode Island, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maine, all being found since March. For example, you had a female body that was found in the woods of a Massachusetts suburb of Milton in June. April, a woman was found dead near a Springfield, Massachusetts bike path. A woman's remains were found along the bank of the Connecticut River in Rocky Hill, Connecticut the same month. March, a woman was found in the woods of Foster, Rhode Island. And look, while every case was different, the identities of many had been confirmed. Authorities indicated these were isolated, separate incidents for the most part. What police tried to do was calm the public's fear of a serial killer on the loose. Now, they didn't stop online speculation that all of these were connected. But now, this is something that's not getting enough attention. As all of this is going on, it is being reported by Boston 25 that there may actually be a serial killer who was caught. Now, let me be clear. I'm not saying this person is directly connected to all the deaths that I had just mentioned. There's no evidence to suggest that right now. And frankly, and I'll get into this, it may be impossible he was able to do this. Maybe there's 1 or 2 that we have to be talking about here. But, and this is to be clear, this is not vindicating all those who say, oh, there was a serial killer and the authorities were saying there wasn't a serial killer, now there's a serial killer. I'm not saying that. But whether or not there's a connection to anything I just mentioned doesn't take away the fact of what the guy I'm about to mention, what he's accused of doing. How can we not address the arrest of someone who authorities are concerned may be linked to multiple deaths in that area? It's almost like the public was looking for a serial killer, and now authorities may have just found a different one in the area. So I want to talk about 38-year-old Kevin Lino, who's currently facing 2 counts of first-degree murder in connection with the deaths of 2 homeless men. But there is maybe a remote possibility that they are investigating him in connection with other deaths, maybe the ones that we just talked about. So I want to talk right now about 38-year-old Kevin Lino, currently facing 2 counts of first-degree murder in connection with the deaths of 2 homeless men. He was arraigned in August, and there was a lot to get into. So I want to go through what we know so far, and I want to bring on a special guest. I want to bring on journalist Bob Ward from Boston 25 News, host of New England Unsolved, who's been covering this development. Bob, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate you coming here on Sidebar. So I want to start here. What do we know about the circumstances of Lino's arrest? How was he apprehended? This was back in the summer, right?
Yeah, well, he has been in custody for a couple of years, and he was arrested in Louisiana as a fugitive for a murder out in Montana. So he's been in custody, and while he's been in custody, these new charges are being brought against him.
What is he accused of specifically with these new charges?
He is charged with first-degree murder for the deaths of two men in the Boston area, one as far back as 2010, the other one in 2012.
This is Gary Mellinson and
Right,
Douglas Leon Clark, right? So
exactly.
what do we know about what happened to them? I mean, what is the theory of prosecutors right now? What are they saying that he did?
In the Melanson case in 2010, Lino was living in a homeless encampment up in Lowell, which is on the pretty close to New Hampshire, north of Boston. And he was living at an area there, and he got into an altercation with Melanson. He was upset that Melanson was lighting fires at the encampment and thought it would attract the attention of police. And the allegation is that he viciously beat Melanson to death and sprawled his body across the top of a tent in the homeless encampment. That death was ruled undetermined. And so Lino, 2 years later, is in a homeless encampment in Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts, just over the river from Boston. He apparently got this idea that he wanted to rid this homeless, unhoused population in Harvard Square, where they used to hang out. He came in contact with Douglas Leon Clark. And the idea is that Douglas Leon Clark was found dead by the side of the river, the Charles River. It was suspected to be an overdose, but now they're saying that Lino purposely gave him a hot shot, which is a fatal overdose of heroin and some other drugs. And those are the circumstances between those two cases.
And let me just lay out a little bit more. I saw this from the Lowell Police Department. It says this, quote, on the afternoon of November 29th, 2010, Lowell police received an anonymous phone call reporting a body under the Rogers Street Bridge. Upon arrival, they located Gary Mellinson's body sprawled over a collapsed tent with numerous visible wounds. An autopsy conducted by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner concluded he had suffered blunt impact injuries to his head, torso, extremities, including fractured ribs, a collapsed lung, a fracture of his left arm. His manner of death, as he said, was initially ruled to be undetermined. 2 years later, August 2nd, 2012, Cambridge police received a call of a man apparently unconscious in the area of 975 Memorial Drive on the bank of the Charles River. Upon arrival, police located the body of Douglas Leon Clark, 30 years old, who often went by the name Rage. Goes on to say toxicology examination of the victim's blood revealed the presence of a substantial concentration of morphine, as well as codeine, ethanol, and gabapentin. His manner of death was recorded as an accident, a result of acute and chronic substance abuse. There was no evidence at that time that the death had been intentional. So, Bob, what changed? I think there was something that happened in 2018, right?
Right.
What drove them back to this?
And I'm still trying to understand exactly how this all got put together, but the state police attached to the Middlesex County DA's office was doing some work on an unrelated case, and they were able to develop information about the Melanson murder. They must have talked to witnesses and got a clearer picture of what happened up there in Lowell, and that's what drove them there. And they also got some information once they had the name that also they started figuring out where he was. Then they started tracing him back over to Clark and took another look at that. And that's how they developed the charge in Douglas Leon Clark. He's also been convicted of another homeless person also in 2012, so the same year as Douglas Leon Clark. This is Norman Varrier. And he was found on a pier on Boston Harbor behind the Boston Garden. In an area called Paul Revere Park. And his body was found there badly beaten, but he was still alive. And he died a couple of days later from blunt force trauma. And so Lino was connected to that murder eventually, and he's doing time on that one. But those are the three before he heads out to Montana, 2010, 2012, and 2012 again.
So you're talking 4 deaths in multiple
Right.
states right now connected to him. By the way,
Right.
do we know how he was able to move from place to place, what he was
No.
up to?
There's a lot we don't know about Kevin Lino. I'm still trying to figure out. All we know is that he's at one point he lived in Lowell, but I don't have a lot of information on his background, how he moved around from just Lowell down to Cambridge. You could walk. It's a long walk. It's many, many miles, but he got around. And then how did he get out to Montana and why he went to Montana? We don't know.
And when it comes to Gary, they allegedly beat him with a baseball bat, that it was some
Right.
dispute over starting fires, that it was going to attract attention. It comes
Yeah.
from Douglas, he seems, I guess the allegations right now, he was part of this homeless or unhoused community, but really had some ill will towards them in a way. Right?
Yeah, he has, if from what we're seeing, he's got a real rage problem. He has an issue with somebody and he flies into this uncontrolled anger and he goes after these people. And, all of these victims are unhoused, the unhoused community, they're homeless, and they don't get a lot of attention. I will say that the Suffolk County DA with the Norman Varrier case, he did have a press conference about that, and he was asking for the public's help when Norman was found, injured, fatally injured on that pier in Charlestown. So it's not that nobody cared; it's just that it doesn't get the attention that it would something like this would have if this were a predator kind of a thing where somebody is stalking the stereotypical serial killer Ted Bundy or something like that. But that's what got my attention with this when I found out that this guy was picked up on these new cases. It's, well, how many more cases could be out there, because nobody knew about him? And he was picked up for one case in 2012 in Suffolk County. The 2014 case out in Montana, he's got a 40-year sentence on that. But, there's a lot of time and space for him to move around and for there to be a potential for more victims. And I'm very concerned about it. In the media, we don't keep track of these homeless deaths. And one of these was a suspected overdose. So that wouldn't be on our radar. So it's pretty incredible, I think, that the state police here in Middlesex County, which is right outside Suffolk, how that unit was able to put this all together.
No, you raise a disturbing point, and it's a really troubling point about there being a lack of focus, lack of attention when it comes to this segment of the population. So it is reassuring to see they are bringing renewed attention and investigating and bringing charges with respect to these two individuals. Just to be clear, though, it would be impossible that Lino's connected to any of the deaths that started popping up in March of this year in the New England area. Like I mentioned to you, we covered this so extensively, all of these deaths that were popping up. Now, as far as I know, unless you're talking about a body that had been there for years, he is not directly connected to these rumors of a New England serial killer. It just so happens to be, as there's talk of, is someone connected to all these deaths, you have somebody who allegedly had been killing in this very area.
You know what? On the surface, you're right. He's been incarcerated since about 2015, so he's not available to do some of these cases that we're hearing about. However, I'll just throw this out there that one of the cases involves the discovery of a human skull in Plymouth, Massachusetts, south of Boston. So we don't know much about the circumstance of that skull. We heard that it's a tiny skull, but we don't know how long it was there. We don't know who the person was. We don't, I think there's a minute possibility, but it's not zero, that he could be connected to something like that.
Do you know if authorities are trying to see if he's connected to this in any way, or to any of these deaths that we mentioned that began in, the bodies that were starting to be found earlier this year?
I think that they are looking to see if he is connected to any other cases that are out there here in this area. And at the same time, they're trying to get out the word to other departments and other places. Hey, we've got this guy. Do you have anything out there that's beyond our jurisdiction? But the last I checked, they hadn't really heard from anyone yet. But I don't know if, the word has really gotten out there. This has been kind of underreported,
It's funny you mention that, because when I was writing this and I was looking into it, it was your reporting that I only saw about it. It was just your report about it. And I was like, this needs to be amplified a little bit more if we're having this conversation.
Right.
And so great work on your part to do that. You spoke to the Middlesex County District Attorney, Marion Ryan, right? What
Yes.
did she tell you about all this and maybe her concerns about this Lino allegedly being involved in more deaths, allegedly being a serial killer?
Well, she came right out and told me that Kevin Lino is a serial killer. And that kind of set me back a little bit because in my experience working in New England, I've covered other serial killing cases. That can be kind of like a third rail, and I've watched, what happens. But she was bold. She said, no, he is a serial killer, that under the definition of the Department of Justice, it's two murders not connected. And he's already got two, the two that he's incarcerated for, and they're bringing charges in two more. So she is very concerned about this, and I know that the state police that are attached to that unit, the cold case unit at Middlesex County, they're very concerned about it too, because out here the fentanyl epidemic has claimed so many people. There are a lot of missing people out here in Massachusetts, and I'm sure across the country. But in my area where I report, there are concentrations of missing people. I try to do as many of these stories as I possibly can. And it just raises the possibility, how long have these people been missing? Is there another Kevin Lino out there? And this is a guy that was in a homeless encampment, off the radar, off the grid. If this is happening involving this person, there's likely to be more out there. So all of that is on the table here.
Now, yeah, DA Ryan said, quote, these allegations demonstrate a violent pattern of behavior in which the defendant is alleged to have targeted and victimized some of the most vulnerable members of our communities. These cases, not initially ruled by the medical examiner to be homicides, left the families and friends of Mr. Mellinson and Mr. Clark with little or incorrect information about what had happened to them. When I created the cold case unit, I made a commitment to re-examining existing evidence and to exhausting every possible option to bring answers to families. In this case, through painstaking investigation and the development of new evidence, we were able to uncover the truth behind the deaths of Gary Mellinson and Douglas Leon Clark. You mentioned before that Lino's already serving time for the murders of Norman Verrier in Charlestown in 2012, for Jack Gilbert Berry at a homeless encampment in Missoula, Montana 2 years later. This is interesting. I understand you spoke to a citizen journalist who met Kevin Lino, right?
Yeah, he at the time, the journalist was working for the homeless in Missoula. He was doing some outreach social work, so he knew and he saw Kevin Lino. He wasn't intimately involved with him, but he was very much aware of him because this is interesting. He attracted a little group of people around him, like a little gang family, and they kind of moved together. And the Berry murder was somebody who was close to Lino, and that's how that happened. And then they all scattered. They all left, he told me. They all disappeared. This little group disappeared. So Berry is found. He was that murder was really incredible. I mean, he was beaten. He was shot in the head. Lino allegedly made carvings in the victim's skin. I think he urinated on the body and then pushed the body into the river. And that's where Berry's body was found. But then Lino was gone. This little gang of people, they were gone. The FBI put out an alert, and eventually Lino was found in Louisiana. And the citizen journalist, Travis, he told me that he's concerned about a man who was hanging out with Kevin Lino and was part of that crowd in the encampment in Montana. He said that this guy, Monty, was taking care of the pit bulls that belonged to the group. And he's traveling with them, but he is nowhere to be found. Everybody else has been accounted for, but that guy, Monty Swanson, is still missing. And he's concerned that Kevin Lino is responsible for that disappearance and possibly his death. And it would make a lot of sense. I mean, as I said, this guy, his profile is that he just flies into a rage. And it seems like, it seems like it escalates. So when he gets out to Montana, he allegedly has already killed 3 people in Massachusetts. And that murder of Jack Gilbert Berry is just over the top. So if there was another argument If something happened between Lino and Monty Swanson, where could he possibly be? So Travis Matier he has a blog and he's been raising that possibility, and he's trying to get authorities out there to pay attention and actually, develop information, maybe find Monty, because he thinks that he could be a fifth victim.
I was going to ask you, are authorities, have they talked about this? Are they looking into what happened to Monty? Are they working with Travis? Is there any confirmation?
Don't know. I don't know. I was trying to get somebody to talk to me from Montana for my story, but I wasn't really successful in doing that.
What's the status of Kevin Lino's case? I understand he had his first court appearance on these new charges in August, right? I mean, what do we know about the status of his case?
He is back in court on December 1st in Middlesex County, I think for a probable cause hearing. Okay. So, we'll be paying attention. He's going to be in court on the same day that the Brian Walsh trial begins. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
I know. So that's going to be crazy.
Well, I mean, they're both important stories.
Yes, they are.
Obviously, Brian Walsh is getting a lot of attention right now, but I am curious to hear what evidence comes out against Lino.
Right.
That's kind of the interesting part about preliminary hearings or probable cause hearings. Prosecution doesn't have to put all their evidence, but they do put up kind of what they have to say there's sufficient probable cause for this case to move forward towards trial, and then we learn new information. I want to switch gears real quick. I want to circle back to the rumors of this New England serial killer, okay? And obviously we talked about before whether Lino may be connected to at least one of the deaths. But before I get your take, I want to play something, a quick short snippet of a prior interview that I did on this story with former FBI criminal profiler Candace DeLong. Here's what she had to say. So I got to ask you, in your professional opinion, do you think any of these cases are connected? Do you think we have a serial killer amongst us?
Unlikely, and there's no evidence of there's no evidence of it whatsoever. That may turn out to be the case, that some of them are connected, but there's no evidence now. Some of the bodies, but at least one of the bodies, was so decomposed when it was reported, they couldn't even tell not only the cause of death, whether it was a homicide, natural, accident. They couldn't even tell what gender it was until they did more investigation. So I think the internet rumors are fun, but they're a little too early.
So, Bob, going back to this New England serial killer story, this theory that has been ramping up on social media, what can you tell us about this? Is this something you looked into? Is the community still concerned? What can you tell us about it?
People are concerned about this. I started seeing this grow in interest on social media at the beginning of the year. And I watched how people were saying there's a body found here, body found there. And thousands of people all of a sudden started talking about this possibility. So I started making calls on the cases that are in and around my area and trying to find out, is it possible? Is this body connected to that one? What's happening with these cases? And I found, from my calls at the time earlier this year, that they were not related, that some of these deaths were suicides, some of them were accidental. But no one's been arrested for quite a few of these. So I like to say that law enforcement is skeptical about linking all of those cases together. And that was kind of the tone of what I was getting back. But that didn't really quell anybody's nerves. People were worried about it. I had heard that, college kids especially were looking at this and worried about going out in public. So it wasn't a hysteria here, but it was in the back of everyone's mind. And I think it has died down a little bit, the concern. But, there are other serial killing cases in New England. Kevin Lino is the latest one that we've uncovered. But there's the the New Bedford serial killer from the late 80s. There are 9 dead women, 2 missing. That has never been solved. There was another case in Worcester called the Maine South Woodsman case. That was, I think, 5 women. There's a suspect in prison now, held on another murder that's not part of that case. But the main South Woodsman has never been solved. And there are some other cases too. So I think that one of the things that people get hung up on when you talk about serial killers is, they think about the sexual predator, the Ted Bundy or the John Wayne Gacy or the Jeffrey Dahmer type of a thing, when in reality, there are other serial killers who kill for other reasons. And that's what we have allegedly here with Mr. Lino. And it makes them, just as dangerous as these other well-known cases. And here in Massachusetts, we do have serial killing cases that have gone unsolved for decades. I know when the Long Island serial killer, when the arrest was made in that, I started getting calls about seeing if he was here in Massachusetts at some point. And he was, but it didn't look like, nobody could pin him to New Bedford or to Maine South. But it's something that people are thinking about and hopefully people are concerned about. Not overly so, but it is something that's happening. And these serial killers, they come in all shapes and sizes. There's no one recipe for these guys.
No, it's 100% true. It's a scary thing to think about. Bob Ward, thank you so much for coming on and great reporting on this. Really, really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Time.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow me on X or Instagram. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.